About the meeting. Anyway, okay, everybody ready? I will call this meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Director Sewell.
Here.
Director Martin.
Here.
Director Grasha.
Here.
Vice President Duncan.
Here.
President Wright.
Here.
Thank you. We have quorum.
Okay, thank you. Any public input, Dory? Or
I
no?
have no members of the public on the line.
Oh, okay. So we'll go on to item number 4, Mission Springs Water District West Valley Water Reclamation Facility. And I just want to remind everybody that there will be no action taken at this. This is a workshop. So I will turn this over to Arden, General Manager.
Thanks, President Wright. Can you hear me? Everybody
Yes.
hear me? Okay. Okay, I'll just briefly say that, in a little introduction here that, I think I always need to start out by saying that our customers are the people that do the work in America. And they work hard for their money. And we need to do everything possible to run this district as efficiently as possible. And many times that is accomplished by what we call a strategic planning process. Planning that encompasses a very extensive research, very extensive involvement, and very extensive transparency. We've literally had dozens of public meetings laying this plan out. Benjamin Franklin has a famous quote that I use now and then, and it goes like this: failing to plan is planning to fail, and that is so true. And failure in this area can cost the ratepayers millions. So we will today provide you with some history, but more importantly, we will explain in some detail the process that this project has been subject to. This is a very unforgiving business, which is why we carefully follow a very methodical process in almost everything we do. This actually begins about 30 years ago. Maybe Nancy can remember that back then. And I believe this might be one of the district's largest single project, even though our groundwater protection project is running around $70–80 million maybe. Our two existing plants were built in the 70s, and we are experiencing the development envisioned back then. And this means that the entirety of our service area has changed. Efficient wastewater service is dictated primarily by achieving gravity flow, and the location of the low point dictates the collection and treatment. To provide service now means that we have a new low point that can not practically take flows from the expanded areas now developed. Our job is to provide service to the areas that this community decides they want to develop, and not that we want to develop. It is our response to respond to that. The location of this plant was obvious for many reasons, and it was back in the 90s when, I think wasn't it, Nancy, when they decided they purchased the actual area that is going to be the new location.
Yeah, that was the second spot we chose. The first spot wasn't available, but yes.
But I think the important thing here is to note that this location has many advantages. First, it does provide the additional capacity that we need at the Horton, and it is presently and imminently needed. But it also, secondly, provides the operating flexibility more than we thought was even available, but it definitely provides the operating flexibility that is necessary. Thirdly, it provides a service to the Indian I-10 area that is experiencing development that cannot be served without treatment in this area. And lastly, and I'm going to bring up another reason here in a bit, but lastly, it is in a location that can provide future reuse that will be essential to the future communities we serve. And timing is critical, and the failure to move at the right time can result in additional costs to our ratepayers, and that is something we want to avoid. Our groundwater protection project abated thousands of septic tanks, and flow is now diverted to our Horton plant. And consequently, the plant and its upgrade are now capacity. And so we need to not only increase our capacity, but we need to treat, but we also need to do so in a manner that solves many problems. And one additional issue that we will see today in Steve's explanation or his history, it allows us to go after grants and funding sources, not possible if we just chose to do a minor expansion at the Horton facility. And with that, I'm going to let Mr. Steve Ledbetter take the floor from here. Steve?
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. This is Steve Ledbetter with TKE Engineering, and I'm serving as the project manager for the district's West Valley Water Reclamation Program. We put a presentation together today. Give me a second to go ahead and share that with everyone. Okay. So welcome. The focus of today's meeting, our objectives for today's meeting is to develop a better understanding of what the components of the West Valley Water Reclamation Program are, and as Arden alluded to, kind of define this regional approach, what it really means to have a regional project and how it was envisioned, and with the groundwork being laid back in the 90s with the purchase of this surplus property for the future regional plant, and then in through the 2000s with the development of the district's wastewater master plan that really identified this project. And then from there, we'll kind of outline the progress that we've made on the project to date and the next steps ahead of us to get the project to completion. So our outline for this afternoon or for this morning is, again, to give an overview of the West Valley Water Reclamation Program, to talk about the development of the program, discuss some of the flow projections and the drivers for this regional approach, and then also discuss our progress. Today's presentation is, as a workshop, it's meant to be interactive. Feel free to jump in anytime if there's questions or whatnot. And then I also want to point out up here in the upper left portion of the slide is the slide number. So if there's any questions on a certain slide and you want to jot that down on your end, feel free to do so, and I can easily jump back to whatever slide or page we're talking about at that time. And one other housekeeping item, this plant was originally called the Regional Wastewater Treatment Plant. A lot of the development and the groundwork in the master plan, it was referred to as the regional plant. And then after the regional plan has moved forward, it's been renamed the West Valley Water Reclamation Facility. So don't be alarmed if we use those two terms interchangeably throughout the presentation. So I first wanted to give an overview of the West Valley Water Reclamation Program, and it really consists of three components. It consists of the West Valley Water Reclamation Facility located down at 20th Avenue and Little Morongo Road. It's a proposed 1.5 million gallon per day sequence batch reactor treatment plant. The flows, the wastewater flows that would serve the plant come from component 2, which is we refer to as the conveyance line, shown on your screen in red. It consists of a force main from the existing Dos Palmas lift station at Dillon Road and Avenida Manzana. It pumps flows uphill to the intersection of Little Morongo Road and Dillon Road, and from there, gravity sewers bring it down to the proposed West Valley treatment plant. The conveyance line is being proposed a dual force main system, and that allows the district to pump current flows, but also to pump ultimate flows without having to put in additional pipelines. So again, the existing lift station will only pump interim flows or existing flows and near-term flows, but the piping system that we'll be putting in will serve the ultimate flow needs of the district. And then component 3 is the Groundwater Quality Protection Program, Area M2, and that's shown on your screen in pink. It's an extension of areas L and M1, and this would complete the septic to sewer conversion for the areas south of Horton. The service area for the West Valley Water Reclamation Program is outlined in the green hatch that you see here. And the current service area population is about 8,500, and the median household income is 36,000. And I'm pointing that out because later on in the presentation, we'll talk about how that played into getting grant funding for the project. The West Valley plants will accept flows from everywhere south and east of the Horton plant. In addition, it will accept flows from the entire service area from Little Morongo Road west to Highway 62. Initially, as we discussed with this green hatched service area, it'll accept flows on day one from areas L and M are currently pumped up to the Horton plant and from area M2. And then in the near term, once the treatment plant is built, we would be able to connect the I-10 and Indian area, which is shown in green, to the plant as well. Once the project is complete, these current areas, L and M1 that are shown in brown, they're currently pumped by the Dos Palmas lift station directly north up to the Horton plant. We'll be redirecting those flows over to the regional plant and thus creating capacity, additional capacity at Horton by alleviating around 200,000 gallons per day of flow that currently pumps up to Horton. So again, on day one, we'll be able to alleviate and create additional capacity at Horton and provide the seed flow to the regional plant for it to begin construction, or excuse me, begin operations. A few benefits of the project is we're proposing an innovative treatment process that really allows for future expansion without any throwaway. And what that means, right now we're doing a sequence batch reactor, which takes care of your primary and secondary treatment inside of one tank. And in the future, we can convert this plant to a membrane bioreactor, so it uses really tiny filters to filter out all the bad stuff in the wastewater. And we can expand from its currently proposed 1.5 mg, double its capacity without any throwaway of what's we're constructing today. So that was something really key to the district. We know we need that flexibility to expand the capacity in the future, and having the ability to do so in the existing footprint and minimizing any throwaway or wasted district dollars was really a key benefit for this technology. We'll be enhancing the district's treatment capacity and having space for future expansion. As we know, the Horton treatment plant is now surrounded by residential communities, and that really limits the district's ability to expand that plant any further without causing, I wouldn't want to say harm to the public, but without having, issues with the public with having a treatment plant in their backyard. In addition, it allows for the expansion of the district's groundwater quality protection program. By doing so, this will create enough capacity between both plants, primarily at Horton, to be able to build out or complete the remainder of the groundwater quality protection program without expanding the capacity at Horton. And I know I'm kind of going through some of the highlights right now, and as we go through the presentation, we'll kind of get into the reasoning and the why behind some of the benefits for the project.
I have a question.
In addition to what Arden alluded to, it will provide future reuse opportunities and operational flexibility.
Excuse me,
And
Steve.
I wanted
Somebody,
to take a second to talk about
Steve.
that operational flexibility on the next slide.
Steve Ledbecker. Hello, Steve. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear
Steve.
you.
Somebody said I had a question. I didn't.
That
Oh, my
was-
apologies. I did not hear
No.
that.
Yeah, that was
Yeah, I know.
Steve Grosha. Thank you,
Okay.
President Wright. One of the reasons that I asked for the meeting was there was some question brought up at a meeting a few weeks, maybe a month and a half ago, about the conveyance line that you're referring to here, having problems with right-of-way acquisition. I wondered if you could expand on that. There's a big red line throughout this map, and I believe that's referencing that conveyance line that I understand has run into some troubles. I'd like somebody to describe what those problems are, if in fact this is what it was that I think Danny Friend mentioned it in one of his reports. So if you could focus on that for half a minute, I'd be grateful to that. And the plant refers to being a regional plant. I wondered if somebody from either the consultant or from our staff might be able to fill us in on what regional agencies have gotten involved in committing support for the plant besides our district. Those two are key thoughts that I have right now. Thank you.
Okay, certainly I can discuss the first one. Let me try to zoom in here. I know this isn't the best graphic to maybe explain what's going on, but the conveyance line, it's a gravity sewer that comes down from Dillon and Little Morongo due south all the way to the proposed treatment plant. Right here where I'm kind of circling my cursor is where it crosses over 18th Avenue. And the issue we found during design is that there's public right-of-way on the east side of the street center line. Right here where I'm circling, everything north of 18th, there's an existing right-of-way only on the east side of the section line, going north-south. And then immediately south, there is only public right-of-way on the west side. So in essence, we have a checkerboard pattern where we have right-of-way in this corner and this corner, no means to cross from one side of the street to the other with the proposed gravity sewer. We are looking at two different options, and the first of which is an easement on this corner, the southeast corner, which is currently conservation land, but the district has prior prescriptive rights, the way we understand it, because we have water facilities there. Due to Department of Public Health requirements, we're trying to maintain more separation than going that route would ultimately allow. So we're looking at partnering with the city, or I should say we have been in discussions for the last 3 or 4 months with the city to partner with them to get us right-of-way on the west side between Dillon Road and 18th for street and utility right-of-way. If those discussions, go on for too long, the district can still have the ability to go seek out an easement with this property owner to, again, get from the east side of the street to the west side of the street. So that's the hiccup that we identified during design, but the timeline for the treatment plant project is much longer than the timeline to complete design and construction of the conveyance line portion. So what that allowed us is some time to go back and work through both of these options with district staff and city and conservation, or excuse me, CBAG staff, to see what would be the best alternative to get the right-of-way needed to construct the red line, the red conveyance line. Does that kind of answer your question, Director Gracia?
It helps a lot. I'm just curious. It seems like we have the same legal ability to. Why would we need the cooperation or the involvement of the city to get right of way?
We don't need the cooperation of the city to get a corner easement, as I'll call it, to get our pipeline from the east side of the street to the west side of the street. What staff and I had discussed is it may make more sense to partner with the city to there's only 3 property owners in this segment between Dillon and 18th, and get the entire future roadway right-of-way completed at the same time. Oh. And that would allow the district to put the sewer line on one alignment going down Little Morongo. So it kind of cut down on zigzagging, if you will, the pipeline, a big 36-inch pipeline from the east side of the street to the west side. It just from a future planning perspective, it makes more sense to see if we can make that go. If that doesn't ultimately work, this partnership or coordination with the city, there's nothing stopping the district to move forward and get a corner easement to construct the pipeline as currently designed. All right. So it was in essence a concept, again, that if we partnered with the city, it may, work out better in the future.
All right. So it sounds like it's not, these issues aren't roadblocks, but are just perhaps a nuisance that can be dealt with over time.
Yeah, speed bumps, and not quite roadblocks. They're just speed bumps.
Okay, good. Now on the where it comes off of Horton and heads down Dillon, I see you've got a little bit of a dog leg halfway. Just from a layman's perspective, are we? Yeah, right here, almost where your component 2 bug out is, right there.
Dillon does that.
If because of that, you interrupt a little bit the flow, does that add to the cost of, or is that something we have to do to get around, I don't know, houses? Or
no, that's purely graphical graphic reasons. I just didn't want all those different colored lines stacked on top of each other.
Okay.
The only reason you see that kind of jump. This pipeline stays on one alignment for the most part all the way down Dillon Road. We're north of the center line, and there is no really jogging that would kind of upset the flows and cause more pumping costs or anything of that nature.
Okay, great. That's good news too. All right, thank you. Then that relieves a whole lot of pressure on the thought of the voting for it. Thank you.
Yeah, Director Grashaw, I might add that, you also asked, what other regional agencies are working with us. And the one primary one is the Regional Water Quality Control Board, because the green area down here has basically a prohibition on, septic tanks. And by moving to this area, we're providing the opportunity to provide sewer service in that area and the additional treatment that they will need. It also gives us the opportunity with, like, the Bureau of Reclamation to do reuse. So we have a number of other agencies that I think in the long run, I don't know if you'd say they're partnering, but they were also a part of the decision process and part and parcel to cooperating with us.
One of the other thoughts that I have is that the cost of building this plant will be spread across all the ratepayers, I think. And I would like somebody to put a little bit of effort in explaining that aspect of it. It's going to benefit many ratepayers, but it's going to be paid for by all ratepayers. And I want to get an idea of what the debt service is going to be on the entire universe of ratepayers once we engage the financing.
Okay, Steve, I think Steve's just the engineer. Steve, or do you have more to do on Steve Ledbecker? Do you have more on your PowerPoint here?
Yeah, go ahead.
Kind of get into that later.
Okay,
that's what I was saying.
Yeah, well, I have a slide towards the end that talks about the cost and the different funding opportunities available to the district that we're working on.
Great.
And then I think my next slide should shed some light on the regional benefit to all of Mission Springs ratepayers, not just those shown in this kind of green service area for day one or, the initial treatment plant construction. Ultimately, it would service the entire district. So I think I can answer both of those in the upcoming slides.
I also may ask, we don't have one of the lawyers here today, but I can't really see where I'm at on this map. I think I'm in the service area. Is that a problem for me because of where I live?
No.
I wouldn't think it is today, but it might be in the end voting. I think I'm in one of the green check areas. I don't know if that's an issue. So maybe you could have the attorney look at that, and I'll keep asking questions until they tell me to stop. Okay.
I'll ask for a ruling on that. Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.
Steve Ledbetter, before you continue, thank you for covering those points. One thing I'd like to add to that is a good part of this was for economic purposes. We knew we had time, as it's been framed for several months of regional plant updates. The pause, as it was discussed, was for not moving forward with the design, anticipating that we would go with some sort of utility easement when we had an opportunity to partner with the city and go through a public corridor or public right-of-way easement, and having us to go back and redesign it to accommodate that alignment. So that was one of the reasons why we also did what we did, was purposely to make sure we did the most economical approach to this.
Thank you, Danny. Okay, Steve Ledbecker.
All right, thank you for that. So, I kind of ended with, this regional approach really gives the district operational flexibility, and that's what I'd like to touch on next. What I'll get into in a minute is kind of explaining what these lines mean, but in essence, by having capacity down here at the southernmost portion of the district service area, we can connect virtually any portion of the district and deliver those flows to the regional plant. There is an interceptor sewer planned for the future over here on Indian Avenue that would bring all flows north and west of Indian Avenue to the district or to the regional plant. There's an interceptor right here on Little Morongo that would bring flows and connect, again, all areas north and west of Little Morongo and deliver them by gravity, excuse me, by gravity to the regional plant. In addition, there was discussion on the decommissioning of the Desert Crest plant and bringing all these areas west of Horton, excuse me, east of Horton, and bringing those over, following my flow arrows, over to the regional plant. And lastly, it provides the opportunity to interconnect the Horton plant with the regional plant with using primarily existing facilities inside Avenida Manzana that are currently pumping flows north up to Horton. With a little bit of work, we can interconnect those facilities and deliver divert flows from Horton and bring them down to the regional plant. So really, by building the district's treatment capacity here, it's really going to give the district flexibility to meet not just near-term, but all future wastewater treatment needs. And then another thing I touched on was, again, this is going to provide enough treatment capacity to complete the groundwater quality protection program. And, you know, that's always been the primary driver, which I'll discuss in a future slide. So now that we've gone over the overview, I'd like to spend a little bit of time to talk about, you know, where it was initially envisioned and the steps that got us here today. In 2006, the district's wastewater master plan identified 3 different kind of treatment projects, if you will. It identified the regional wastewater treatment plant, and again, it was located at the southernmost boundary, so it could serve a majority of the service area. It could be collected and conveyed via a gravity system. And it envisioned an ultimate capacity of 20 million gallons per day. So once the city and its the district's entire service area is built out, it would need a total capacity of 20 million gallons per day. That's certainly sometime off in the future, but that's what was planned for at the regional location. It also envisioned decommissioning the Desert Crest wastewater treatment plant and sending those flows over to the regional plant to minimize that, you know, impact with that aging facility. And lastly, it looked at Horton expansion, a potential Horton expansion, and it also envisioned potentially abandoning the biosolids drying beds at Horton and sending those to regional. Now, the biosolids drying beds, those have already been taken care of with a belt filter press system at the Horton plant. In addition, as we've talked about, you know, expansion in Horton is somewhat limited due to the proximity, the very close proximity to existing residential areas. In addition to just the treatment plans, master plan laid out a network of backbone trunk sewer and interceptor sewers that would serve, you know, bring all flows to both of these treatment plants. And in the interim, since the capacity was at the Horton plant, flows coming down Pearson and coming east along Pearson and south along Little Morongo ultimately come across Two Bunch and flow to the Horton plant in the interim. In addition, anything south of the Horton plant is currently pumped up to the Horton plant. And the master plan envisioned that the ultimate flow path, these trunk sewers and interceptor sewers, would then intercept those flows, as we talked about, and bring them down south by gravity to the regional plant. So I kind of wanted to toggle between those two just to show, again, in the interim, everything was meant to flow to Horton as we have, but now that we've reached the capacity at Horton, we can start working towards the ultimate envisionment, which is, again, flows going to the regional plant. And I think, as you can see here, we provide a great benefit to existing developed areas with the regional plant while allowing Horton to service a lot of the city center areas and the groundwater quality protection program areas.
Can I, one more? Can we
Certainly.
on the all of these things you just described, how much infrastructure is involved besides the plant in terms of pipelines and things of that nature to accomplish, to be able to have it all flow, say, for instance, to the regional plant as opposed to the two other plants that are currently in service? We'd have to obviously build a bigger plant, I guess, but you paint a rosy picture. That's the picture that I have in my head of being able to approve. What does it take for us to get there? And I'm not suggesting that we should close any plants, but having the ability to shift is something that I find very attractive. So can we get there from where we are without going way over the budget that you have in place now for this plant?
Yeah, with the facilities being proposed today, at least the two components, the West Valley plant, the regional plant, and the conveyance line, we're going to be sewering a bigger portion of areas for the district. And then in the future, you know, these interceptors and trunks, those would only come online and be constructed, and those would be driven by growth. So when those facilities come in, they'll have to be paid by new development. They're going to have to pay their way. And the sewer connection fees and development impact fees that are paid in would help facilitate the construction of these interceptor facilities that we're discussing. So right now, the regional plant, the capacity that we're proposing is only to serve existing areas. It's only to meet the existing needs of the groundwater quality protection program. Okay. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you very much.
So moving on to 2008, you know, that was in 2006, the master plan. In 2008, with the economic boom going on, the district commissioned a wastewater facility strategic plan. And that really tried to focus in on the timing of a Horton expansion, of decommissioning the Desert Crest plant, of building the regional wastewater treatment plant, and when we'd need these interceptor sewers based on where development may or may not occur. Then the economic recession hit right after that, and all development ceased for quite some time. So it wasn't until around 2013 through 2016 that the district reinitiated the wastewater facilities planning process to kind of reevaluate where the needs are and how we could best meet the district's wastewater treatment capacity needs with the planned facilities. We knew that during that time, if we expanded Horton, it would meet the need for the additional treatment capacity, but it would be limited to just only accepting growth from downtown areas, and it would provide no operational flexibility with just the one plant. But by constructing the regional plant, we could meet the treatment capacity needs while providing the district with the flexibility to respond to various existing and future needs as required. So digging into that a little bit, now talking about the flows, the Horton treatment plant has an existing capacity of 2.3 million gallons a day. And what it has is a critical maintenance barrier of about 1.7 million gallons per day. And what that critical maintenance barrier is, it's a kind of a timestamp or a flow stamp that says, once I get flows above this, I cannot take my largest treatment train out of service and still treat all the flows coming through the plant. And the facility exceeded that flow rate back in 2017. So you see some of the planning efforts we were doing between 2013 and 16, we knew where we had to go. We knew we had a treatment capacity need based on the flow projections going up to and exceeding the critical maintenance barrier. And then there's an 80% capacity threshold, which is kind of a second threshold criteria that we crossed at 1.84 MGD, which we exceeded in 2018, that again tells the district it's time to now plan for that future plant. We now can't take our largest treatment train out of service, and we've exceeded 80% capacity. So now's the time to really start laying that groundwork for an expansion or a new treatment plant. And with the West Valley plant that's being proposed, we would have a capacity of 1.5 MGD, with a critical maintenance barrier of 1 million gallon per day and an 80% capacity threshold of 1.2. That's just to show you kind of how these two plants tie together, flow-wise. Something we've talked about quite a bit today is the primary driver for additional treatment capacity is the district's success with the groundwater quality protection program. This exhibit highlights all the different areas that have been divided up for the groundwater quality protection program. And through a divide and conquer approach, the district has completed several, which are shown in brown on your screen in front of you, several of these septic to sewer conversion projects that have ultimately driven the need for this additional treatment capacity. Right now, we're somewhat limited for building or pursuing any other construction of Assessment District 18 and Assessment District 15 areas until we generate enough capacity to treat those additional flows. So what you'll see is there's a few different areas with areas H and I, those are currently under design, those are shown in red. Areas M2, J2, and D3, those have design completed. They're ready for construction whenever we can line up grant funding dollars. And areas A, G, and K are both design and construction. Areas A and G are slated to be funded for design through the Army Corps', I think the 2019 funding. So really what I'm showing here is that the district's success is continuing, and we really need to add additional capacity to serve the existing communities. So the capacity we're building, yes, it can accept growth, but we're really adding that capacity just to take care of the district's success with the existing communities that we serve. By taking them off the sewer, protecting our groundwater resources, and treating that water to a much higher quality before it's discharged back into the groundwater aquifer. And then one thing that we've talked about that Arden alluded to is down here at I-10 and Indian, you know, there was kind of a quasi-moratorium on development in that area, and then the district was receiving pressure from both the city and the regional board to do something about that. You know, that really is, you know, the doorstep to the community, and with the investment in those interchange facilities, it really has the capacity for growth in that area. So we'll not only be able to take all those existing facilities off of the septic system, it will also provide the facilities for that area to continue to grow.
Can I ask a question? This is probably directed at our staff. I have actually had elected officials from Desert Hot Springs trying to strong arm on this project. What are we going? How are we going to develop I-10 if we don't have the plant? Have they taken a position officially in support of the wastewater treatment plant? And if they haven't, could maybe you guys send a resolution over for their council to pass, so at least we would have that to lean on in terms of being able to say that it's got support regionally other than just our own? Does that sound like a...
That's excuse me, yeah, that's a good idea, Steve. We have gone to the council, and Director Martin is the one that really has teed this up, because he attends all the city council meetings. But I don't think we've ever gotten a formal resolution, but we might have. It seems like I know we did talk to them about it. Do you remember, Danny, if we got anything from them?
Because I'd also like Palm Springs to look at it, the city.
We've talked to them about that too.
Since you have a new councilwoman?
Oh, no.
Maybe we ought to send a resolution to both city councils, and then it truly is a regional plant by having them sign on. I know Palm Springs might be a little more difficult than
well, I like that.
But I think that doing that would be very helpful.
Yeah, I like that idea. Danny?
Just to answer your question directly, I don't believe we've done something that formal, but we have done presentations, as you alluded to.
Yeah.
Both councils.
I'd like both councils to be able to vote on a resolution in support of it.
All right, I'll put that down, Steve, and see what I can do.
Yeah. Because I get a councilman telling me one thing, and I wonder if he's just full of shit. So, you know.
Yeah, you wonder sometimes.
Right.
Okay.
And I think you know what I'm talking about there. Thank you. I'm sorry
Okay.
to bust in on you. Go ahead. Very good
No,
report.
not a problem. Again, this is meant to be interactive. We want to try to address, questions throughout as they come up. So I appreciate the feedback. So we're kind of now culminating and bringing this back together as to, what really developed this regional approach. And I know this graphic is really hard to read, so I have a couple zoom-ins on the subsequent slides. But what's ultimately envisioned is these areas shown in blue are really the service area for the existing Horton treatment plant. And when we did our flow projection analysis, we were able to say, hey, if we were able to divert some of the existing flows from south of Horton away from Horton, then Horton could accept all the flows from, or excuse me, a majority of the flows from the groundwater quality protection program. So again, just the existing communities are going to benefit from the additional capacity created down here. In addition, once we convert area A, we would need to divert some additional flows, whether it be on Little Morongo Road or divert them from Horton. The Horton facility can accept 100% of the groundwater quality protection program flows. And that's really a key benefit that I want to try to convey today. So again, the Horton plant is really just servicing the downtown district. It's primarily existing developed areas with limited future development. I know there's only been a little bit of talks about a potential development here. Danny may be able to clarify the name of that development. It's escaping me at the moment. And then there's the potential for an existing development maybe out in this area, but there really is no proposed large-scale developments that would need to flow to Horton. Whereas the regional plant can accept everything south of Horton and everything in the district's north and west service areas. So again, what we were able to identify is that with a phase 1 capacity of 1.5 MGD at the regional plant, we can redirect 0.2 MGD or 200,000 gallons per day from Horton to the West Valley plant. It would allow Horton, again, flows to remain below that critical maintenance barrier that we talked about. It would allow Horton to remain the critical maintenance barrier below that for 5 years. So Horton, once the regional plant is operational, it has the ability to do any kind of operational needs that it has over the next, 5 years. And then thereafter, the district, as flows continue to increase, we need a mechanism to divert additional flows depending on where growth or the success of the groundwater quality protection program occurs. And with that facility, right now I label it as the Little Morongo Interceptor with an asterisk, which I'll talk about on the next slide. By building that facility, we would allow the Horton to remain below its critical maintenance barrier for another 10 to 15 years, in essence allowing for the completion of the groundwater quality protection program and Horton to be able to accept those flows. And I want to bring it back to this slide that we've talked about, and that's the future expansion flexibility. We're not locked into anything with this regional plant. By having the ability to either interconnect Horton or build some kind of future trunk or interceptor sewer that we've discussed, those flows can be routed down to regional and allow Horton to remain in its current capacity for the foreseeable future. Really, an expansion at Horton is probably a moot point at this time. It would really take something drastic with redevelopment to really drive a need for that, but we can, as I'm showing, we can accomplish that through a myriad of different ways. Now I wanted to talk a little bit about the funding for the West Valley plant. And what we talked a lot about today is, really the driver here was additional treatment capacity. And I only need to meet additional treatment capacity with components 1, the treatment plant itself, and component 2, the conveyance line. Connecting additional areas does nothing to provide that additional treatment capacity. So you may be wondering, well, why are we doing a collection system? Well, we're doing a collection system because that maximizes the grant funding opportunities available to the district. When I showed the slide earlier, I talked a little bit about the communities that we'll serve are disadvantaged communities. They have a service population of less than 20,000, and by doing this collection system, an extension of the groundwater quality protection program, it also brings in another benefit, which is a groundwater protection component. And what that does is align this project up to get funding from multiple sources from the State Water Resource Control Board. The first of which is the Small Community Wastewater Grant Program. That program allows for up to $8 million in grant funding for projects that are regional and that serve a population of less than 20,000. And there's another hook with rates and disadvantaged communities, which the district both meets. I won't bore you with those details right now. And there's another program from the state board called the Groundwater Grant Program. And if you're doing a project that helps prevent the contamination of groundwater or a potable supply source, then you're available for an additional $8 million. And then lastly, the intention is to fund the remaining components of the treatment plant or the program cost through the state revolving loan fund, which provides low interest rates for 20 to 30-year terms. Our recent discussions with the state board, we're working towards a draft funding agreement in the next couple months. I think they quoted a current rate of about 1.4%, which may continue to go down depending on, impacts of the pandemic and what the state and federal government ultimately does.
Steve, this
Yes.
is Nancy. Hi, I was just wondering if you've heard anything about the WVWRP program, the Federal Water Infrastructure Finance, I think it's a Implementation Act, I think is what it's called. I just read that they had $6 billion to fund $12 billion worth of water projects. Anything on that?
Yeah, I did see that, and that's something that I want to talk to staff about. That just got released, the WVWRP program, or this latest cycle.
Yes.
It's a little bit of a gray area. The state board, they're primarily funded with state bond dollars. But the SRF program, that's backfilled from the federal government and with some of the funding. So I know we can't match. There's only a maximum amount of funding we can get from the state board, and I'm not sure if there's any limitations with additional federal dollars in bringing them in to help pay for the project. But that's something that we're talking about actually tomorrow or later this afternoon, at the staff level, that we're going to be working with the general manager to talk to the state and see if that's an opportunity or if there's any conflict, I should say, with the WVWRP program and the groundwater grant program, the small community wastewater, and SRF programs that they offer.
Great, thank you.
Isn't most of the WVWRP a loan program, Steve, or is it some of this loan forgiveness? You
No, I think there's a grant portion, or I think it's primarily grants from what I recall. I haven't looked at the WVWRP program for a few years, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I mean,
but what that is the WVWRP program came about because the federal government has it just escaped me, Title 16 projects. And if you have congressional approval as a Title 16 project, you're available for certain government dollars. And I believe, if my memory serves me correct, the WVWRP program was created to alleviate that requirement to get congressional approval of your project and make it easier to disseminate funds for qualifying projects, of a wastewater or groundwater nature. So again, we'll have to dive into some of those details and kind of clear up that gray area on what we may be available for. But that's a significant amount of money available that we should certainly take a shot at seeing if we can get more funding for the project.
We will be on it.
Great, thanks.
And now I wanted to present kind of a breakdown of the three different components and how they're being proposed to be funded. First off, the Groundwater Quality Protection Program. We're not proposing to use any state revolving loan fund for that component. We would be getting about $4.5 million from Assessment District 15 proceeds and matching that with a portion, 50-50 match with the Groundwater Grant Program grant from the state board. So there's about $8 million, up to $8 million available, and we'd hope to use roughly half of that to match with Assessment District 15 funding to complete the Area M2 collection system. Now on the conveyance line, since the conveyance line serves a portion of that groundwater protection area with areas L, M1, and M2, we can get a portion of that groundwater grant funding to go towards the conveyance line. And the remaining cost of that conveyance line we would pick up through the SRF program. And then lastly, with the West Valley Treatment Plant, again, the flow from areas M2, L, and M, they also allow us to maximize or attempt to maximize the up to 8 million available towards the treatment plant. So the capacity needed inside the conveyance line and the treatment plant that's required for areas L, M1, and M2, we can get groundwater grant funding to pay for, in essence, their portion of that capacity. So we are going to get up to full 8 million from the small community wastewater grant towards the treatment plant, and an additional, 2 or 3 million, whatever's remaining outside of the M2 and conveyance line towards that, and working towards a maximum funding allocation of about 16 million in grant. In addition, there's, like as mentioned, another 4.5 million from the proceeds from Assessment District 15. And ultimately, the SRF will be used to make up the remainder of that cost.
I might just add at this time that the thing that hasn't been said so far, but I think you all know this because we've said it to you before, but a 1.5% grant is money in the bank too. I mean, that translates into, if we were paying normal interest rates for these loans that we would typically have to pay, the advantage of the 1.5% translates into, a considerable savings for the community. So all of these together really help the financing that we're putting together.
Yeah, and of note, that's something that we're working with Matt McHugh, the Director of Finance, on, and that is seeing what, how we can make the best use available of the programs available to the district. Does it make sense to seek the full 16 million in grants, or would we be better off negotiating a smaller grant amount and a lower interest rate? So that's something I'm not going to get into today. I'll leave that to the finance people. But those opportunities are available, and we are having those discussions with the state board. We had a very positive discussion with them a couple weeks ago regarding the timeline to get us to an actual funding agreement where we actually understand if we're going to be able to maximize on the grant funding available. We know the money's there. We know we qualify as a DAC. We know we've had our spot in line for 1.5 years. So again, we're finally getting to that point in the process to identify what that looks like or confirm what that looks like, which kind of leads me into my next slide.
Okay, first of all, before you do that, I just want to remind you guys that High Desert Water District, for their septic to sewer conversion, they got a 1% SRF loan for $150 million. So push for the 1% instead of the 1.5%.
Right.
Yeah,
see if you can.
And that's something, again, we've been talking with Matt McHugh on, and he's going to be helping us make sure we get the best deal for the district and the district's ratepayers in that regard.
I have no doubt. Okay, thank you.
So I kind of wanted to end, this is roughly my last slide. I wanted to end with some of the progress that we've made to date. Programs of this magnitude, they really do take some time to develop. We've been after this for some time. As Arden mentioned, the district began purchasing properties back in the 90s. It was initially envisioned to build this regional plant back in 2006. The impacts of the economy kind of put us on pause and allowed us an opportunity to reshuffle and bring back what we have in front of us today that's ultimately going to provide a better product and operational flexibility to the district. So since, we got board approval back in 2016, in 2017, we initiated the design, the CEQA, and WDR permitting processes. And in 2018, at the direction of the regional board, we completed the groundwater modeling and anti-degradation analysis as it relates to the treatment plant as part of the WDR permitting process, and we completed the PDR. And it was also in 2018 that we brought the treatment plant back to the board for authorization to continue moving on what we call phase 2. Phase 1 was, hey, let us get pen to paper and start to develop this treatment plant, see what it looks like, what it's going to cost, and how it's going to benefit the district before we spend any more dollars to completing the design. And ultimately got that approval in late 2018. In 2019, we finished the CEQA. We got an environmental impact report completed and approved and certified for the project. And with that CEQA document, we were able to submit our SRF application to the state board for combined use of small community wastewater, groundwater grant, and SRF funding. And we completed 90% design. In 2020, we're slated to complete design, receive our WDR permit, and go out to bid and complete our SRF funding process all this year. You know, design's on track to be completed in the next 2 months. The WDR permit, we're still working with staff behind the scenes to, you know, in essence, come to an agreement on an interim limit that the district can meet while also not losing focus on ultimately protecting groundwater quality. In addition, we expect, based on our discussions with the state board, to obtain our SRF funding agreement before the end of the year, by the end of the year at the latest. So that really lines us up to begin construction in early 2021 with an approximate construction duration of about 18 months. So again, it's expected in 2022 we'd be able to complete construction and begin startup and operation of this landmark project for the district. I'm sure there's some questions, but I just wanted to kind of end with one more thing. A program of this nature, again, it takes time to development, and it's not without its challenges. You know, early on in our discussions with the regional board, they required us to go do groundwater modeling. We came back with that analysis, and then they further directed us to do anti-degradation analysis. So that kind of put a little bit of impact on the schedule back then. Ultimately, it led to a better understanding of this project's impacts to the subbasin. In addition, it gave us the technical basis we need now to discuss effluent water quality limitations in the WDR permit that we need to meet the district's needs. In addition, our flow projections and PDR, they identified a larger capacity, a larger initial capacity for this plant. When we initially started moving forward, we thought 1 MGD would be enough to meet the district's needs, but once we got into that flow projection analysis, we realized that we really needed more capacity to meet the district's interim and near-term needs. And with that, though, a benefit of that is we got economies of scale. It was going to cost us over $20 million for 1 MGD and the high 20 millions for 1.5 MGD. So we brought down the cost of that, again, with economies of scale. In addition, during that process, we also identified, instead of a conventional treatment plant like what we have at Horton, is this sequence batch reactor process. And again, that's going to allow the district in the future, we in essence add, you know, another bank of tanks on the south end of this project, and we've doubled our capacity at a relatively lower amount than it would cost us to do a full 3 MGD of conventional treatment. So again, that was a benefit. It was a hurdle, it was a speed bump along the way, but ultimately it resulted in a benefit and will serve the district into the future. Something that we talked about before, another kind of speed bump that we've hit was the right-of-way issue along Little Morongo. But what it allowed an opportunity to coordinate more with the Conservation Commission, see if we had an opportunity there, potentially coordinate with the city of Desert Hot Springs, and see if we could come together to get the ultimate road right-of-way that would also serve the district's utility needs on the Little Morongo Road corridor. And that's really come at no impact to the project schedule. At the staff level, you know, I am going to note that we are at that point where we can't really wait around for the city to move forward with this road right-of-way on Little Morongo. So we're going to be entertaining moving that forward on our own so that we don't impact the project schedule. In addition, another hurdle that we've had to overcome is the economic boom. Over the last 4 or 5 years, construction costs have really skyrocketed. But, you know, with the current pandemic and construction slowing down a little bit, that's actually going to work in the district's favor when it comes time to bid the project and ultimately pay for it. And kind of one of the last challenges that we've had to overcome is the SRF application process. Part of the process early on with the state board, I think Arden, you know, or the general manager was actually flying up to Sacramento and laying the groundwork at the state board level with the board for this project, for funding this project, and explaining the needs and making sure those were conveyed adequately. And we've been working for now 18 months. It's going to take about 18 months in total to get a funding agreement in place with the state board. So, you know, there's been some hiccups and some frustrations to try to move this forward, but I think that's inherent with anything, any type of project of this size. And with that, I'd like to open it up to questions. We can go back to other slides. You know, I'm really open to how we want to wrap this up today. Oops.
Okay, okay, we're gonna stay on this slide that says questions, so you can go back if anyone wants. Okay, because I can't see anybody. Anybody have any questions? I can't see you, so.
Yeah,
Pardon?
I had one, Steve, just on the timeline slide. I know you mentioned the right-of-way with the city is just a speed bump. Could you give maybe more specifics? Is that a mutual holdup between us and them, or really just on the city themselves? And then do you see any potential like larger or roadblock things that could come up that would affect the timeline?
Let's see, with the city, we prepared some plats that the city would need to start discussions with the property owners. We had started these discussions back in February or March with the city, and we prepared some plats that would help facilitate this process. You know, a letter going out to the residents on city letterhead, you know, to ask, you know, if they'd be willing to participate and provide a right-of-way to the city. And the city hasn't really made much progress since then, to be honest with you. So that's why, you know, I've been speaking with Director Friend about, or the Director of Engineering Operations, that we really need to switch gears and take back control and probably go about it on our own. And if the city's process ends up taking longer and they ultimately get that road right-of-way, well, great. But the project schedule, we're getting to that point that we need to start moving forward. Otherwise, it would potentially impact the overall project schedule. We certainly don't want to finish a treatment plant and have it ready for construction or ready for operation and not have a pipeline to bring flows to it. So that's something that we are monitoring. Again, we had a few months to see if we could get something to go with the city. Not quite working out as fast as we need it to. So I think it's about that time that we take back control and go ahead and seek a corner easement with that property owner directly as Mission Springs Water District.
Arden, have you talked to the city manager about this yet, between the two of you?
Well, I've talked to him about the plant, but, you know, I mean, just in conversation, I mean, you know, I like the idea of, you know, moving forward a little more formally. I don't know that he's going to be able to influence the timing on the Little Morongo easement, but, you know, I'm as soon as I wait and get the lead from, you know, Steve and Danny, if they want me to go do some legwork with the city, I'll be glad to. We have a good relationship with the city.
I know you and Chuck do, yeah.
Yeah.
Danny, I don't know, did he spark anything in you?
Well, what I wanted to do is I'm not pointing fingers or throwing rocks at the city. We all been with this 19. They're still all working from home. Communications has been challenging, not because of their not wanting to work with the district, just because of that reason alone. So, as Steve Ledbetter has alluded to, we've got the time, but if we don't manage this and be proactive about this, it could get in the way. So we may have to revert back to the utility easement, as Steve mentioned.
That's fine. That's fine. Just was curious if.
Okay.
It could be the timing too. Yes, it could be the timing.
With the city is because the city actually has an opportunity to turn it into. It's already in their street plan. So why not do it now than later? And if it can help us out and speed the process up. But we've all been plagued with COVID-19, so I just wanted to be careful. We do have a good relationship with them.
That's a good point, Danny. You know, the opportunity hasn't been there to have the conversations that we had before the pandemic. And
okay.
This is Steve Ledbetter. I'd like to add one more thing. You know, I don't want to take away from the district's authority, but to go after a street easement has a little bit more authority coming from the city than it does from the district. And a lot of times a property owner, having done a lot of safe routes to schools projects, you know, we'd ask a property owner for right of way in front of their property, and they would get the benefit of a curb and sidewalk and new driveway in front of their house. So the intent there was kind of, hey, well, maybe we have an opportunity to partner with the city, have their overall authority, that a property owner would be willing to give it over for free, the right of way, because they know that there would be a future roadway benefit to those parcels. They would have a paved access at some point in the future, and at the same time, it would benefit the district. So we're certainly going to approach this in a similar manner now as Mission Springs with a corner easement to request that for free. But if we get into the potential, you know, it may be something we have to purchase, and it ultimately may be something we have to go to eminent domain to get. So that's why I'm saying we're at that point to where if we had to go nuclear option and go with an eminent domain process, we need to understand that now so it doesn't impact the overall schedule. So we still have several months of play, if you will, in the overall schedule. But if we have to go eminent domain, we need to start to identify that now. And that's kind of where I'm saying, hey, maybe it's time we start moving this forward as the district, because with the pandemic, it's just kind of slowed down, you know, forward momentum on some of these items because you're not getting that face-to-face weekly interaction with our counterparts over at the city.
Okay, got it. Good luck.
We will try.
It seems
Randy's, oh, I'm sorry. Who was talking?
Me, Steve.
Okay.
It sounds like maybe the city council over there might enjoy a meeting on this subject so that they could be brought up to speed in terms of the importance of their city focusing on this for the betterment of their own, you know, responsibilities. I don't have a problem jumping in and making it clear that where we're putting the line and what we're willing to do to accomplish that is every legal option that we have available to us, including eminent domain. I don't have a problem with that at all when it comes to sewer installation. I see Russ's hand, so there's two trains of thought there. One is let's play nice with the city, and the other is let's have one set of tracks heading straight to the courthouse in our own district thinking, if you know what I mean. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. Randy had his hand up first, so I'll go to Randy.
Yeah, quick question. How close are we to 100% complete on the design?
For the M2 portion, the 100%'s there. It just needs to be repackaged with what we're building. So that would be completed relatively quickly. AECom on the treatment plant, AECom is working on the 100% design now. We're expected to have the 100% plans. Well, I'll say 100%, but again, it's the district's final review process. We'll have the 100% plans in August. And then I'll give the district another couple weeks to go back through, check off any final details. That goes back to AECom to prepare the final kind of issue for bid package that we call it. And that gives us the signed stamp set that we post for contractors to bid on. So we're really looking to clean that up in the next 2.5 months.
So it's right there then. All right, good, thank you.
Okay, Russ, turn off your mic, or turn on your mic, I should say. There you go.
Yeah, to address Director Grosh's comments, the City Council is very much aware of the importance of building this treatment facility. They can't move forward with development unless there's an infrastructure and a sewer treatment facility. They're very much behind this. I get asked about the progress all the time on this. If there is a road bump, it probably is on the technical side of staff and getting certain issues resolved. But the City Council is firmly behind our development of the wastewater treatment facility.
That's what I've heard too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Then they
Thanks.
wouldn't mind voting publicly in support of it. I think a simple resolution would be great help.
Okay.
You know, I think that's a good idea. You know, but it just seems like that it's difficult getting items with this pandemic on their agenda, but we'll
Right.
try. That's a good idea.
Have Victoria write the resolution and send it over. And if they don't put
Exactly.
it on their agenda, then we have something to talk about on Facebook for the next 6 months. There's an election in November. It's a fun way to do business.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Sounds good. And maybe talk to them before we just send a resolution, you know, and maybe just a letter of support
Well,
versus
I'll
a
call-
resolution.
I'll
They might
call
go for
Chuck.
something like that. Yeah.
Yeah,
But I
I'll
think
call Chuck.
yeah, you call Chuck, and then Russ is our liaison, so you can deal with Russ on communicating with them too if you need to. So
Okay.
thank you. Okay.
Good points.
Okay. So what's next? Anybody else have any questions on this? Did everybody get your questions answered? I think is that all the presentation? Is that
Yes,
all we got?
that's it.
Okay. It's not all. I don't mean all. It was
Pretty
very good
thorough.
presentation. Thanks, Steve. Ledbetter, it was very good presentation, very well explained, and I liked your graphics a whole lot. That should come in handy, and if the city or anybody, actually, if we go with the city, we should also ask the county, because we have a lot of county in our district that is has the groundwater protection project in it, and then so does the I-10 Indian, which would be Palm Springs. So might think about the county also.
I agree. My thinking is to just add to the swagger of the project and the importance of it so that everybody's aware of what we're doing and the importance of it. By bringing them on in support of it would be a great help and help to raise the community's spirit on our attempts to move us forward on these things in a time when everything seems to be rolling backwards. This is an opportunity to put our best foot forward. Thanks.
And I think it'd be very good for the grant monies also. I know collaboration with
Right.
with other entities is always good on a grant.
Yeah.
Just
I
a letter
agree.
of support works good. So, okay. Well, then if I don't see anybody else, I think I have all of you here. 1, 2. I don't see Randy. Randy, oh, there you are. Counting y'all. So I don't see anything else. So it's staff, Arden. We'll go to the next one. General manager's comments. We got more of the agenda here.
No, yeah, I don't really have anything except for I want to, you know, we have a meeting tomorrow. You'll notice on that meeting that we, in a bit, I asked for your forgiveness. We didn't include the COVID. However, everything is going perfectly. We don't even have anybody being tested right now that you know of. We're working just fine, so it's okay that we don't really have much to report anyway. And the second thing I want you all to consider is every year at this time we consider going dark in August, and I don't know that we've ever done it while I've been here, at least maybe one meeting here and there, but I would like you to consider that, especially this year, because our staff is, you know, we're trying to get caught up with, you know, being split and a lot of the work that we need to do. And I think you can see that we're very lean. And so if you can go dark in August, we would not argue with that. Let's put it that way. So that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Director's comments. Just kind of raise your hand. I see all of you. Randy.
A couple of things real quick. Yeah, going dark in August is fine. You know, if something pressing comes up, obviously we can address that. But if it's routine business, we can skip August, that's fine. And then secondly, Nancy, again, congratulations on winning and keeping your last row seat.
Thank you, Randy. Ivan, you had your hand up.
Yeah, just a big thank you to Steve Ledbetter and staff for putting together the presentation. You know, we've heard a lot of it bit by bit throughout the monthly meetings, but it's nice to have it all into one. And it's definitely something we really need, this West Valley plant, and I'm happy to see the progress. So thank you.
Russ?
Yeah, the congratulations have been going out to you, Nancy, and Arden said something about emails were sent to board members and a press release was forthcoming. I have no idea what you're talking about. Could you care to tell us what we're congratulating you for? So.
It's the special district's Eastern Riverside County LAFCO seat. The ballots were there was 30, I think 31 votes or 30 votes for special districts, and I got 20 of them. So I had to get 50 plus 1, but the alternate seat did not get 50 plus 1. There was about maybe 6 or 7 people buying that seat. So we'll have to go through the process again, I believe, to get the alternate. But thank you. Thank you.
Congratulations, Nancy.
Thank you. I would like to welcome staff. I thank you, some of the staff too. I think Victoria and maybe Carol and Brian, they all kind of helped out a little bit. Arden. So thank you guys too.
That says a lot, because that you're very popular out there with among the other.
Madam President.
Who else? Anybody else like to say anything?
Madam President, this is Danny.
Oh, hi, Danny. Where are you? I don't see you, but okay, yes.
No problem. I had my hand up, so I figured you couldn't see me. I've been going back and forth via text with Steve, and there's a couple of things that we were just talking about that we should mention, and also to answer Director Sewell's question about future roadblocks or concerns. So if I may, can I turn this meeting back over to Steve for a continuation of some of the presentation?
Oh, yes, please do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'd be remiss if I didn't bring this up to complete answering Director Sewell's comment or question. The right-of-way that we've talked about is one hurdle that we're having to overcome. And the other hurdle that we're nearing completion on has been the WDR process, our waste discharge requirement permit with the Regional Water Quality Control Board. We started this process back in 2017, which I kind of walked through during our timeline. We've done a substantial amount of additional analysis at the cost of the district to meet the requirements of the permit requirements. And now that we were issued a draft WDR from the regional board, to be blunt, they set a TDS limit that was lower than what the district could ultimately meet. So I alluded to it. We are working with staff. We think we're going in the right direction to get a TDS water quality effluent limit that this treatment plant could actually meet. But those discussions are ongoing. We originally slated to get that WDR for it to be on the regional board's agenda back in May, and we had to defer that. We provided additional information to staff to see if we could work with them to revise the limit to something that would meet the district's interim needs. And we subsequently found out in late June that we couldn't quite hit the July agenda either because we got a little bit more ways to go. I think we're on the right track with staff, but that really is the only other hurdle that we're trying to overcome, which we plan to address at the September regional board meeting, one way or another. So again, I would have been remiss to not at least tee the board up, let the board know that is one other hurdle that we're currently overcoming. Again, I think we have positive momentum. The district has invested a lot in the technical studies that are kind of fortifying our position for a higher TDS limit. Not going into too much details, a primary concern, not just of the regional board, but also of the district, is salt nutrient management. So we understand the board's position to want to have a lower salt limit, a TDS limit in the effluent, but we feel that's a bit premature by not allowing the salt nutrient management planning process to really run its course and identify the best opportunity to manage salts throughout the Coachella Valley. So that's kind of a little bit of what we're dealing with at the regional board level. Again, staff has been receptive and willing to work with us, so we're still working through that channel and with the hope to go to the regional board in September for an approval of our WDR permit. So again, that's just one other little hurdle that we're working through right now that we expect to wrap up in the next couple months.
I have a question.
Okay, go for it.
What is typically the salt content of the water going out of the plant?
The background water quality so the groundwater in Mission Creek is, I want to say, anywhere from 400 to 550, maybe 600. It's within that range. The background water quality in Garnett is lower. It's in the 250 to 400 range. And since we're pumping water and using the water primarily from Mission Creek, it gets used, which increases the salt content above the 450, 550 range, and then it goes through our treatment plant. It has a higher salt content. Right. And since we're discharging that Mission Creek water, primarily, 98% of our water comes from Mission Creek, we're discharging that due to the location of this plant in the Garnet Hill subbasin. The regional board has really latched on to this anti-degradation requirement to try to protect the groundwater quality within the Garnet Hill subbasin from further degradation due to, the district discharging Mission Creek water, in essence, into the Garnet Hill subbasin. Did that answer your question?
What is the TDS of the water that leaves our plant, our Horton facility?
So the Horton facility, that's a great question. Thank you, Director Grasha. The Horton facility, over the last 5 years, the TDS has increased from the mid to high 500s to the low 600s. So currently the last 6 months, we've been averaging just above 600 milligrams per liter with the effluent at the Horton plant. Now, understanding we're just scalping flows, we're diverting flows away from that Horton plant, we expect our effluent to be very, very similar, if not exactly the same, and be around, if not quite slightly above 600 milligrams per liter.
Right.
The regional board, they first came out and said they wanted us to meet a 550 milligram per liter TDS limit, which is impossible without advanced treatment. Some of those negotiations or discussions back and forth based on additional data, they kind of said, hey, well, maybe we'll let you go to 600. And that's why we're still working with them. We said, look, on day one right now, we don't feel we could meet 600 milligrams per liter because we're already exceeding that at Horton.
The water that that I see out of my tap is regularly in the mid fours. I've seen it as high as 480. The water in the creek coming down, feeding the aquifer is in the mid two, like 220 to 240. So it's so when you say Mission Creek, you're talking about the aquifer, not the actual creek coming off the mountain.
Yes, the full aquifer itself. Yeah, right. So combined, again, there's a range. There's influences from imported water recharge of Colorado River water. And, that's kind of really what's driven the overall increase in TDS in the subbasin up over the last, 15, 16 years.
I think
so that's just a hurdle we have to overcome. But again, I think what we're really after is, the current WDR requirements for Horton is a 400 milligram per liter above that background water supply. So at Horton, that we know that in Mission Creek, the water that we pump from, our supply source, primarily Mission Creek subbasin, we have, as you alluded to, the 450 to 550 range. And so our permit requires that we meet 400 plus that background.
Right.
So our current TDS limit at Horton is in the 850 to 950 range.
The
regional board, we thought we were on the same page because they said, well, we'd like to ratchet that down a little bit, excuse me, to 300 milligrams per liter above your background source supply. So again, if we're talking about the 450 to 550 range, we'll just say 500. That would mean our effluent limit would be 800.
Right.
And we at the staff and, on the consultant side, even our treatment plan design consultant said, yeah, that's not a problem. We'll definitely be below 800 milligrams per liter for a long time before we would need to have any kind of advanced treatment. So that's really where we thought we were on the same page until they started bringing in this component with the anti-degradation.
Right.
And we're certainly symptomatic to that, but, not to go too much into the weeds with the background hydrology, hydrogeologic, but there's thousands of acre feet of groundwater flowing from Mission Creek subbasin into the Garnet Hill subbasin every year.
Right.
And we're only going to be putting in a couple hundred acre feet per year. So really what's driving the anti-degradation, it's not man-made or district-made, it's really what's happening naturally, ultimately degrade Mission Creek, or excuse me, Garnet more so than the district's project.
It's impossible to have this conversation without mentioning what the TDS is of the Colorado River water that we're importing, which is in the high 4s all day long, and they're bringing it in, basically dumping it here, and it sounds like they're expecting us to clean that as well, because it's regularly 460 to 480. I don't know how we could be expected to improve that. You talk about advanced treatment. Well, they need to do advanced treatment on the Colorado River water before it gets here, because in my view, that's where the degradation is coming from. Just my thinking, and I don't want to sound like I'm speaking on behalf of the district, but that's the issues that brought me to be interested in running for the board. And I found the comments that you made to be very enlightening, and I appreciate the entire report that you gave. It filled in a lot of blanks, and it makes it possible for us to move forward with this without much other than conversation, without any real aversion to going ahead with the construction of the project. And thank you for bringing up the water quality. That's it.
Not a problem, Director Grasho. One note, or a couple notes there. The Colorado River salinity level, or the salt level, is in the 700 to 800 range. I just want to make sure we note that it's not in the 400s.
Well, and coming in both ends of the valley, I've measured it myself, and regularly at 460. And you're right, it probably regularly is above that. The water from the that we're getting, I think, is a different. Has a. I want to be careful. Has a slightly less TDS than the water coming through the Coachella Canal, and I think that's because of the way that the Coachella Canal comes further down the river.
Certainly.
And I haven't tested that water myself, but I believe it to be well in excess of the 800 that you mentioned. So all of these things to me are fascinating and all important for the community to be aware of, because every decision that we make in our homes and at this board affects the future viability of this desert as being a place where humans can continue to live. I say regularly that we are couple of mistakes away from becoming Bombay Beach, and it feels like that every time somebody says, hey, we need to import more salt water to fix the Salton Sea. It makes me want to strangle people. Adding more salt to the environment is not the way forward for human species. So anyway, that's me and my 2 minutes on the soapbox. So you guys go ahead with your meeting. Thank you.
It's your meeting too, Steve.
Thank you. One final comment.
Go ahead, Steve.
Madam President, one final comment. I think the general manager said this much more eloquently than I'm going to, but I'm going to attempt to. What we're struggling with is the district has made significant investments and efforts backed by the local ratepayers through the passage of assessment districts to clean up or to improve the TDS and nitrate issues related to septic systems. And as we're nearing the completion of that program, we need this capacity to finish that out. We feel that the regional board is coming after us now to have additional requirements. And that could potentially really hamper the district's ability to complete the groundwater quality protection program. So it's not that we don't agree and we're not moving in that direction, but it has to be incremental. It has to have the support. We serve some of the poorest communities in Riverside County, and they've shown tremendous support by passing assessment districts to help pay to fix this problem. So again, what we're really after is we understand, we're tackling it on the groundwater quality protection program front, and then we want to let the salt nutrient management plan that's being updated currently, let that kind of drive the process and see where the dollars are best spent from a regional approach to treat salts. It can't be done by Mission Springs Water District alone. Our treatment plan, again, is we're talking about a couple hundred acre feet on day one or within the first couple years of operation, when we're talking about hundreds of thousands that's being imported of a much higher salt content. So we know we have a problem. We know it needs to be addressed, but where's the bang for the buck? What's going to help our ratepayers, help pay for this in the most cost-effective manner?
All right. The only comment I'm going to make is that what we're asking, it's along with the line of the Steves are saying, and that is we want to be treated like everybody else. But right now, what the regional board is doing is putting a standard on us that's more restrictive than the rich communities south of the tracks. And that's not right. And they haven't completed their salt nutrient management plan yet. And as Steve said, it's time for us to look at it as a regional approach. That's how we will reduce our costs. And it's the logical way to go about getting rid of the salts. And I agree with Director Gracia and the rest of you when you say we really need to watch that.
Okay. Anybody else?
None here. I appreciate the additional time to kind of bring that issue up and walk through it with the directors. And I just wanted to thank the board for your continued support and guidance on this project for the district, this West Valley Water Reclamation Program. At the end of the day, it really is a landmark project for the district and a giant step in the right direction. So thank you.
My only comment is if any of you ever have any questions, just give me a call or we're very open and everything we have is available to you. Okay.
Okay. Sounds good to me. Okay. Well, we're a little bit early here, so it's time for your guys' lunch anyway. So it worked out quite nice. If I don't hear anything else, then I will adjourn the meeting. Meeting adjourned.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody. It was a good meeting.
Thanks.
Thank you.